If you have any idea who Shazam is, then Sakura hater might be a good description of my personality, and that's an understatement. I gladly own that fact and very proud of it, as hating Sakura gives me a life and purpose, so essentially, there is no Shazam without Sakura, and maybe vice versa, who knows. Sakura surpassing Tsunade has been a highly debated topic, with most people thinking Sakura did actually surpass her, but to what extent is a question that remains unanswered. Again, that is if she actually surpassed her, and today, with me, you're getting the full non-biased answer. At least I'll try to be. This video will follow the same formula as the one where I proved through unmatched analytical skills and transcendent levels of observation that Jiraiya is the strongest Sannin at their strongest points, where I looked at it from a narrative perspective, statements, stats, and finally feats. But first, I want to clarify. As you all know, I'm a more consistent power scaler than a lot of members of the animal kingdom. And so from the get-go, Sakura did not surpass Tsunade because she punched Kaguya or outran her tail, and I'll explain why. The speed feat that's used for that argument is that Sakura was running away from a tail Naruto claims is fast, means she's near Naruto's speed or something. First off, no, Naruto already had hundreds if not thousands of clones, which splits chakra equally, thus lowering his potential speed. Second, Naruto's flight speed wouldn't be the same as his body flicker speed. We don't even know if, and it's likely not the case, that Naruto can use body flicker while flying. If Naruto was that fast while flying, why did he push the original that was directly facing the tail away from the tail? Why not just body flicker away? And let's say the clone body flickered into Naruto and Sasuke, wouldn't that break their frickin' spines? I mean, sure, Naruto could tank it, but there is no way in hell Sasuke is tanking that. So basically, Naruto dodged it, and I hate to say it like that, but with pushing speed. Which leads us to Sakura. If pushing speed could dodge it, then casual running can as well, especially when Sakura starts in the ground, meaning there is a massive distance between her and the tail, and it was still catching up to her. Now for the punch. Alright, I've seen claims that the punch is stronger than 9 Biju Rasen Shurikens, but let's make one thing clear. Kaguya reacted to the Rasen Shuriken. She literally stood there and activated her Byakugan in response to it. She could have absorbed it or used her punching chakra stuff, or both, I don't know. But one thing is for sure, if she lost the whole sleeve of her clothes, but nothing else, then she definitely didn't get damaged in other areas. I don't think her clothes are more durable in certain places. As for the punch itself, not only was Kaguya damaged by Kakashi, a whole shoulder in fact was out of commission, but she was also reacting to both Naruto and Sasuke at the same time, and she reacted multiple times with taxing jutsu like portals and shiz. And then Sakura comes out of nowhere to get the last punch, and she can suddenly destroy a universe? And for the record, anyone with strength like Sakura's, aka Tsunade, would have done the same amount of damage. The absence of a feat doesn't mean it's impossible, because by that logic, Sasuke can't use any of the other Six Paths abilities that he hasn't shown, in which case the argument boils down to abilities, not simple-minded scaling. Let's not forget that this claim shamelessly means that Sakura is stronger after she exhausted all her chakra than she is with all that chakra, but sure, I gave up on this planet a long time ago anyway. Now let's start from a narrative perspective. There are multiple ways to look at things. One, Tsunade is still stronger. This is because the Sannin, as I've already stated in a previous video, still even in the war arc, some of the strongest ninjas aside from gods and shiz. And this is because Sakura is simply a normal ninja who just happened to gain the Byakugo with almost no experience whatsoever. And as we've seen in the series, her courage is nowhere near Tsunade's, and was even more scared than Kakashi, whom at that point was definitely weaker than Sakura since he had just lost his Sharingan. Even though I believe this way of looking at it is the least plausible, I'll get to a different one which will solidify it kinda, so before you judge this point, wait for the next one. The second one is that Sakura and Tsunade are equal. The reason I say this is because Sakura and Tsunade fundamentally have the exact same abilities regardless of their mastery over it, so their value on the battlefield or their list of counters would be the same. And another reason is that Hiruzen claims that Team 7 became the new Sannin, referring to KCM1 Naruto, EMS Sasuke, and Sakura after unlocking the Byakugo. You could argue, well, Hiruzen has no way of knowing their powers, and I say you're absolutely right, but you have to remember that this is only from a narrative perspective, so it's just set as a foundation before you build other arguments on top of it. But there is also one problem here. Remember how I said this point will solidify the one of Tsunade still being stronger. That's because Orochimaru at full power was implied to be stronger than EMS Sasuke, so if this comparison doesn't mean they're equal, then they could possibly mean Team 7 is still inferior. To make sense of it, I explained in my QB video that KCM Naruto is very weak, and with Orochimaru's statement meaning Prime Orochimaru is stronger than Sasuke, and it won't make narrative sense for Sakura to be the only one stronger than Tsunade, since we know for a fact that at that point Sasuke was weaker than Naruto because he was bitching about him being strong, and Sakura is definitely not stronger than Naruto, so if his rival isn't even equal to him, how is Sakura equal to him? So it goes like this. 1. Naruto, 2. Sasuke, and 3. Sakura. Further proves Jiraiya, Orochimaru, Tsunade, but whatever you say. The third point, Sakura did surpass Tsunade. The next generation always surpasses its predecessor is a very basic theme in Naruto, and this just happens to fit into it, especially considering Naruto at full power does surpass Jiraiya at that point. Don't tell anyone I said that. And Sasuke surpassed weakened Orochimaru in the war, and Sakura surpassed Tsunade, who's already old and has to waste chakra to keep her youthful appearance. I think this point and the previous one make a lot of sense, but who am I to tell? As for stats, I don't think it's fair to use them, because the last stats Sakura has were from the third data book, which covers the way before the war, meaning Sakura didn't have nearly as much chakra, and by extension physical strength and healing. But I will be going over their nature types. For Sakura, she has water, earth, yin, and yang. As for Tsunade, she has fire, lightning, earth, water, and yang release. At first glance, Tsunade seems to have the upper hand here, which could be true, I don't know. I'm not saying she doesn't, but you have to remember that Sakura having yin release opens the door for her to counter a whole category of ninjutsu, and that's genjutsu, which happens to be the specialty of many ninjas, including the Uchiha. So while Tsunade could potentially have greater offensive nature-based techniques, which we haven't seen by the way, since she doesn't utilize that advantage, Sakura is considered genjutsu resistant simply for having yin release, or affinity to genjutsu, and we've seen that since part 1. So in my opinion, Sakura would have the upper hand, as her extra nature type that Tsunade doesn't have is pretty much a guaranteed counter to a wide variety of techniques, and ironically, more useful. I mean, genjutsu by itself is a whole argument in versus battles, but this isn't to say Tsunade can't counter genjutsu. She's arguably got the best chakra control in the series along with Sakura, but Sakura on top of that has something else that helps her break genjutsu. Next I'll be going over statements. Obviously Tsunade's reputation outclasses Sakura's easily. Known as the Slug Princess, in the second war she countered every drug Chiyo had made, was the first to propose the idea of a medic in a 4-man cell, and with that proposal she basically won them the war, combined with her medical expertise. So basically Tsunade was the most important member of the Sannin in the second war, sort of like Minato in the third war. That's how significant she was. As for Sakura, most of her accomplishments were attributed to Tsunade, unfortunately, which leads me to believe her skills as a medical ninja pales in comparison to Tsunade's, which I'll get into later. One important factor for a medical ninja is experience. Believe it or not, having a massive amount of chakra isn't the only thing you need. Medical ninjutsu can heal almost all injuries, sure, but it can also be utilized for surgeries and all that. A perfect example is Lee. He had bone fragments inside his spine, and thus healing would have been inadequate and would have to undergo surgery, which he did. Tsunade initially didn't want to do it because its chances of success were 50-50, meaning there's a 50 chance Lee might die, and this isn't use of medical ninjutsu alone. That requires a lot of studying of human anatomy. And we see Sakura display a less dangerous form of it when she was pumping Naruto's heart. She only needed medical ninjutsu to cut him open and nothing more. So experience does matter, which I'll talk about later. As for the databook statement of Sakura becoming the best medical ninja in the Leaf, that's true, sure, but there are two ways to argue for Tsunade here. The first argument is that being the best in Konoha doesn't necessarily mean she's better than Tsunade. It could mean that her and Tsunade are the best medics. And the second argument is that Sakura is the best medical ninja. Tsunade isn't exactly classified as a Konoha medic. She's the Hokage. And this is solidified when the databook directly compares her to Shizune and not Tsunade. So I think Tsunade, according to the statement, is a better medic, or at the very least equal to Sakura. As for physical strength, Sakura was stated to be physically more powerful than Tsunade. I'm sorry, I mean might be physically stronger. So this immediately tells us that even if Sakura was stronger, she'd only be a bit stronger than Tsunade. So yes, Tsunade would also be able to destroy a dimension with a punch. Joking aside, this statement is even funnier when you consider the fact that it was said by Hashirama. Do you know when the last time Hashirama saw Tsunade? When she was a toddler. Sakura might be stronger than toddler Tsunade. Case closed. As funny as that sounds, we shouldn't ignore author's intent. I think if the statement is made, and that specifically, it should mean Sakura does possess more physical strength. As for feats, well, I've already addressed the false feats Sakura has, and I'd like to address another one. When Madara stabbed Sakura and she regenerated, people assumed that Sakura has some sort of god-level healing because it should have turned her to ash or something, but a less extreme claim is that since the truth-seeking orbs nullify ninjutsu, there would be no way for her to heal, which also isn't true. Truth-seeking orbs only nullify ninjutsu that come into contact with it, and as long as the orb is inside her body, she can't really heal that wound anyway, because the space she'd intend to heal would be occupied by the blade. As for how she healed afterwards, the claim attributes that to the fact that Minato couldn't heal from a hit by a truth-seeking orb, but the difference is Minato's regeneration is passive, whereas Sakura's is active. Minato doesn't have a jutsu that heals, so he expects it to naturally happen, but it didn't. He didn't even pay attention that it wasn't healing. Sakura, on the other hand, has active healing, meaning she isn't dependent on an automatic process. As the statement has already mentioned, Sakura does have superior strength, which might be because Sakura is really young, which already is a stupid advantage to have, and will fade away when she hits the wall. I've been waiting a very long time to use that joke. But you could also make a case for Tsunade, that her grandparents were full Uzumaki and Senju, so she could eliminate that gap. The statement Sakura made about not needing to waste chakra to maintain her youth doesn't necessarily mean she has more chakra than Tsunade. It just means she doesn't have to use some of the chakra she could be using on blowing people up on making herself look youthful. But as for healing, as I established, Tsunade has better healing due to experience, as she instantly healed the dying Shikamaru who was getting healed by a Kyuubi, amped Sakura, so it's likely that Tsunade knows how to and where to focus her chakra in Shikamaru's body. That's about as good as I can speculate about this issue. Or for the Sakura fans out there, maybe Sakura kept Shikamaru alive and Tsunade just healed him. And I have to point something out first. War Arc Tsunade is weaker than Pain Arc Tsunade. Her powers accumulate chakra through years only to be used in mass in a certain day. When needed, of course. This was directly stated. The War Arc happened at most, being generous, 2 months after the Pain Arc, after which Tsunade was in a coma, and even after waking up, immediately started arranging for the war. So logically speaking, Tsunade couldn't have possibly accumulated as much chakra in 2 months while working, being generous by the way, as she did in the 3-year time skip, plus the time until the Pain Arc. Also, she already activated her Byakugo to teleport to the war, so there's also that. And last but not least, Karin wins because she's not only healed Tsunade but restored her Byakugo as well. Case closed. But seriously, the way I see it, Sakura has more arguments, but I'm almost 100% certain Tsunade would be a better healer, and I can certainly make a case for Tsunade still being stronger. In the end, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, like and subscribe, please, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.